The text message arrived at 11:47 p.m., while I was hunched over spreadsheets that should have been finished 3 hours ago. The blue glow of my phone cut through the darkness of our suburban Minneapolis home, like a knife through butter. Don't wait up, working late again, M. I stared at those words, feeling something cold settle in my stomach. Marta had been working late a lot recently. Her advertising agency had supposedly landed some big pharmaceutical account that required round-the-clock attention. At least, that's what she told me. My name is Evan Mitchell, and I'm 49 years old. I manage mid-level accounts at a finance company downtown, drive a 7-year-old Honda Civic, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought I had a pretty decent marriage. Not perfect, mind you, but decent. The kind where you still laugh at each other's jokes occasionally, and remember to buy flowers on anniversaries. I was about to set the phone down when it buzzed again. This time it wasn't from Marta. The screenshot that appeared on my screen made my blood freeze. It was from some group chat I'd never seen before. Looked like Marta's friend circle. The conversation was about me. Poor Evan still thinks that tiny diamond ring was romantic, one message read. God, Marta, how do you stand it? My husband would never be so pathetic, said another. At least he tries. Remember when he brought her those gas station roses? I almost died laughing, came a third response. But it was Marta's reply that hit me like a sledgehammer. You have no idea what I put up with. But things are changing soon. Jake makes me feel alive again. Jake. I knew that name. Jake Morrison, 34, some hotshot junior executive at Marta's agency. I'd met him at the company Christmas party last year. Flashy suit, expensive watch, the kind of guy who talked too loud and laughed at his own jokes. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through more messages. There were details I won't repeat. Intimate things about our marriage that Marta had shared with these women like I was some kind of joke. Like our 22 years together were nothing more than material for their entertainment. I sat there in the dark, listening to the hum of our refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic on Highway 94. Our house suddenly felt enormous and empty. The family photos on the mantle, Ross at his college graduation, Amelia at her high school prom, seemed to be mocking me from across the room. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal. It was how stupid I felt. All those late nights, all those weekend team-building exercises, all those times she came home smelling like expensive cologne that definitely wasn't mine. I'd actually believed her. I guess I should have sprung for cubic zirconia and a timeshare in hell. My phone buzzed again. Another screenshot. This one showing a hotel charge on our joint credit card. The Marriott downtown, last Friday night. The same night Marta said she was at her sister's house helping with the kids. Then came the photo that made everything crystal clear. Marta and Jake at some upscale bar, his arm around her waist, both of them laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. She was wearing the red dress I'd bought her for her birthday, the one she said she loved but never seemed to find an occasion to wear. Apparently, she'd found an occasion. I stood up from my desk, my legs unsteady. 22 years of marriage, 2 kids, a mortgage, shared dreams of retirement in Florida, all of it crumbling because my wife decided she needed some excitement with a guy young enough to be her little brother. But here's the thing about being the butt of everyone's joke for so long. Eventually, you stop finding it funny. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon. The good stuff, the bottle we were saving for Ross's wedding someday, seemed like an appropriate time to crack it open. As I sat there sipping whiskey and staring at those messages, something shifted inside me. The hurt was still there, sure, but it was getting crowded out by something else, something colder and more focused. My phone buzzed one more time. A direct message from an unknown number. You have no idea what you're up against, Evan, but maybe it's time you found out. A friend. I stared at that message for a long time. A friend, right. In my experience, people who called themselves your friend while hiding behind anonymous numbers usually weren't, but they were right about one thing. I had no idea what I was up against. Yet, I finished my bourbon and headed upstairs to our bedroom. Marta's side of the bed was cold and untouched. Her pillow still smelled like her perfume. The expensive stuff she claimed was a gift from a client. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me. Somewhere out there, my wife was probably in some hotel room, with her boy toy, laughing about what a pathetic fool her husband was. They had no idea what they'd just unleashed. The next morning came too early and too bright. I'd managed maybe 3 hours of sleep, and I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. Marta's side of the bed was still empty when I woke up at 6:30. She stumbled in around 7, looking like she'd slept in her clothes. Which, knowing what I knew now, she probably had. "Hey, honey," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Sorry I'm so late. We had a breakthrough around 4 a.m., and I just crashed on the office couch." I was standing at the kitchen counter, coffee mug in hand, watching her lie to my face with the casual ease of someone who'd been practicing. She looked tired, sure, but there was something else in her expression, a kind of guilty satisfaction that made my stomach turn. "Rough night?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "You have no idea," she laughed, and there was something in that laugh that didn't belong to the woman I'd married. "But we landed the account. The whole team is celebrating tonight." "More celebrating. How nice for them." "That's great, honey. Really great." I took a sip of coffee and watched her over the rim of my mug. "Jake must be thrilled." The slightest flinch crossed her face when I said his name. "Bingo. Jake? Oh, yeah, he's pretty excited." She was already moving toward the stairs, eager to escape this conversation. "I need to shower and change. Another long day ahead." "I bet." After she left for work, I sat at the kitchen table and really looked at those screenshots for the first time in daylight. The group chat had a name: Wine Moms Gone Wild. How original. There were 6 women in the conversation, including Marta. I recognized most of the names: her book club friends, neighbors, a couple of wives from her agency. The conversation went back months. Months of them discussing their marriages, their affairs, their husbands' shortcomings. It was like reading some kind of suburban housewife burn book, except I was the main character getting roasted. But the more I read, the more I noticed something interesting. There was one name that kept coming up. One woman who seemed to be orchestrating a lot of the conversation. Victoria Hartman. Victoria, Marta's best friend since college, married to some real estate developer, lived in one of those lakeside mansions in Wayzata. I'd never liked her much. Too much money, too many opinions. The kind of woman who made backhanded compliments sound like genuine praise. "Evan's so lucky to have someone like you, Marta. Not every woman would be so patient." Yeah. Victoria had always been a real peach. I was about to dig deeper into the messages when my phone rang. Work. Right. I still had a job to do, bills to pay, a life to maintain while my world fell apart. "Mitchell," I answered. "Evan, thank God. Where are you?" "The Henderson account is imploding, and I need those projections like yesterday." My boss, Carol, sounded frazzled. "On my way in. Give me 20 minutes. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, but not before I noticed something that made me stop cold. Marta's purse was sitting on the kitchen counter, and sticking out of the side pocket was a key I'd never seen before. Not a house key, not a car key. This one had a luxury car logo on it, BMW. We drove Hondas. We'd always driven Hondas. Reliable, practical, affordable Hondas. I looked around to make sure Marta was still upstairs, then carefully pulled the key from her purse. It was definitely BMW, and it looked new. There was even a little paper tag attached, with a number written in what looked like Jake's handwriting. My hands were shaking as I put the key back exactly where I'd found it. Another piece of the puzzle. Another little breadcrumb leading me down the path to the truth I already knew, but hadn't quite accepted yet. The drive to work was a blur of traffic and rage. I kept thinking about that key, about what it meant. Jake had given my wife access to his car. His expensive, flashy, look-at-me BMW that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. By the time I got to the office, I'd made a decision. I was going to follow those breadcrumbs wherever they led, no matter how much it hurt. The day dragged by in a haze of spreadsheets and conference calls. I kept checking my phone, hoping for some sign from Marta, some indication that this was all a misunderstanding. Instead, I got radio silence until around 3 p.m., when she texted to say she'd be working late again. "Big presentation tomorrow. Don't wait up. Love you." Love you. Right. I left work early, claiming a family emergency, which wasn't entirely a lie. My family was definitely having an emergency, even if only I knew it yet. Instead of going home, I drove to Marta's office building downtown. I parked across the street and waited, feeling like some kind of private detective in a bad movie. But I needed to see for myself. I needed proof that would hold up in court, because I had a feeling this was all heading toward divorce papers and custody battles. At 6:30, I saw them. Marta and Jake, walking out of the building together. He had his hand on her lower back in a way that was definitely not professional. They were both laughing, both looking relaxed and happy in a way that made me want to punch something. They walked to a silver BMW parked in the executive spaces. Jake's car, the car my wife apparently had a key to. I followed them at a distance, my heart pounding like I was about to rob a bank. They drove north on 394, toward the lake communities where people like Victoria lived, where people like Jake probably lived too. They ended up at a restaurant I'd never heard of, the kind of place where appetizers cost more than our usual dinner budget for a week. I parked down the street and watched them through the window, sharing a bottle of wine, touching hands across the table like teenagers. My phone buzzed. Another message from that anonymous friend. Painful to watch, isn't it? But you're just seeing the tip of the iceberg. Check the lakeside mansion on Ferndale Road tomorrow night. You'll want to bring a camera. I stared at that message for a long time. Someone was definitely pulling strings here, feeding me information. But why? And who? I drove home through the dark streets of Minneapolis, my mind racing. Marta was still at dinner with her boyfriend, probably planning their next romantic getaway on my credit card. My kids were away at college, blissfully unaware that their parents' marriage was disintegrating. And me, I was sitting in an empty house, holding evidence of my wife's affair, trying to figure out what to do next. That's when I remembered something my old boxing coach used to say. When someone sucker punches you, you've got two choices. Stay down and let them kick you, or get up and show them what a real punch feels like. I'd been down long enough. Saturday night found me parked on Ferndale Road, feeling like a complete stalker but unable to stop myself. The lakeside mansion my anonymous friend had mentioned was impossible to miss, a sprawling contemporary monstrosity that probably cost more than I'd make in 3 lifetimes. And there, parked in the circular driveway like it belonged there, was Jake's silver BMW. I sat in my Honda, engine off, watching the house through the trees. Lights were on in the upstairs windows, and I could hear faint music drifting across the water. A party, maybe, or just an intimate evening for two. The smart thing would have been to leave. Take my screenshots, hire a divorce lawyer, and handle this like a civilized adult. But sitting there in the dark, thinking about those group chat messages, thinking about Marta laughing with her friends about my pathetic romantic gestures, I felt something snap inside me. I got out of the car. The mansion's driveway was lit by those fancy solar pathway lights that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. I walked up to Jake's BMW and took a good look. Pristine silver paint, leather interior, the works. The kind of car that screamed, I have more money than sense, and I want everyone to know it. I pulled out my phone and took a few photos, evidence for later. Then I walked around to the front of the car and did something I'd never done in my 49 years of life. I keyed it. Not deep, just a nice long scratch along the driver's side that would cost him a few hundred to fix. Then I pulled a piece of paper from my wallet, an old receipt, and wrote on the back, nice car, shame about the owner. I tucked it under his windshield wiper, but I wasn't done yet. I walked around to the passenger side and let the air out of his front tire. Not slashed, nothing that would be permanent damage, just inconvenient enough to ruin whatever romantic plans they had for the rest of the evening. As I was finishing with the tire, I heard voices from inside the house. Laughter. Marta's laughter, the kind of genuine happy sound she hadn't made around me in months. I crept closer to the house, staying in the shadows of the landscaping. Through the large windows I could see them, Marta and Jake, along with several other people I didn't recognize. It looked like some kind of dinner party, all of them dressed up, wine glasses in hand, having the time of their lives. My wife looked beautiful. She was wearing a black dress I'd never seen before, her hair done up in a way that made her look 10 years younger. She was animated, gesturing with her wine glass, telling some story that had everyone laughing. When was the last time she'd looked that happy around me? When was the last time she'd gotten dressed up for me? I was so focused on watching Marta that I almost missed the woman standing behind her. Almost. Victoria Hartman, Marta's best friend, the one whose name kept popping up in those group chat messages. She was watching Marta and Jake with a satisfied smile, like she was enjoying some private joke. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just an affair. This was orchestrated. Victoria's house, Victoria's party. Victoria pulling the strings while Marta danced to her tune. My phone buzzed. Another message from my anonymous friend. See her now? The puppet master? This goes deeper than you think, Evan. Much deeper. I looked around the dark yard, suddenly paranoid. Was someone watching me watch them? This whole thing was starting to feel like some kind of elaborate game, and I was definitely not the one making the rules. I took a few more photos through the window, making sure to get clear shots of Marta and Jake together, then headed back to my car. As I was walking down the driveway, I heard the front door of the house open behind me. What the hell? Jake's voice, loud and angry. He'd found his car. I picked up my pace, but not too much. I wanted to hear this. Someone keyed my car, and my tire's flat. More voices now, people coming outside to see what the fuss was about. I reached my Honda and got in, but I didn't start the engine yet. Who would do something like this? That was Marta's voice, and she sounded genuinely upset. Some punk kids, probably, said another male voice. Happens all the time out here. There's a note, Jake said. Nice car, shame about the owner. What the hell does that mean? I started my engine and pulled away slowly, keeping my headlights off until I was well down the road. In my rearview mirror, I could see them all standing around Jake's car, their perfect evening disrupted by one flat tire and a few scratches. And it wasn't much, but it was a start. The drive home gave me time to think about what I'd seen. This wasn't just about Marta having an affair. Victoria was involved somehow, encouraging it, facilitating it. But why? What did she have to gain from destroying my marriage? I was still pondering that question when I pulled into my driveway and saw Marta's car already there. She was home early, which meant the flat tire had definitely put a damper on their evening. I found her in the kitchen, still wearing that black dress, pouring herself a large glass of wine. Hey, I said casually, you're home early. Thought you were working late. And she looked up, and for just a second I saw something in her eyes. Guilt? Fear? It was gone so fast I might have imagined it. The presentation got moved to Monday, she said, so we decided to call it a night. That's nice. Get some rest then. I headed upstairs, leaving her alone with her wine and her lies. In our bedroom, I sat on the edge of the bed and looked through the photos I'd taken. Clear shots of Marta and Jake together, timestamps showing when they were taken. Evidence. My phone buzzed again. Another message from my mysterious informant. Enjoying the show? This is just the beginning, Evan. Your wife and her friends have been laughing at you for months. Don't you think it's time they learned what real humiliation feels like? I stared at that message for a long time. Whoever was sending these knew exactly which buttons to push, exactly what would make me angry enough to keep playing their game. But here's the thing. I was angry enough to keep playing, angry enough to see where this all led, angry enough to stop being the punchline of everyone else's joke. Downstairs, I could hear Marta on the phone, her voice low and urgent, probably talking to Jake or Victoria or whoever else was in on this little conspiracy. Let them talk. Let them plan. Let them think they were still in control. They had no idea what was coming. Monday morning brought new developments. I woke up to find Marta already gone. She'd left a note saying she had an early meeting. The note was signed Love M, which felt about as genuine as a $3 bill.
Dumb.
I was getting ready for work when my phone rang. It was Ross, my son, calling from college. Dad? What's going on with you and Mom?
Dumb, hey.
My blood went cold. What do you mean? Amelia called me last night. She said Mom's been acting weird, and some of her friends have been posting stuff online about you guys. Something about problems at home? I closed my eyes. Of course it had gone public. Of course Marta's friends couldn't keep their mouths shut.
It's complicated, Ross. Your mom and I are working through some things.
Are you getting divorced? The question hit me like a punch to the gut. I don't know, son. I honestly don't know.
There was a long pause. Dad, if you need to talk.
I appreciate that, Ross. I really do. But right now I need to focus on figuring out what's true and what isn't.
After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen feeling like the walls were closing in.
It was one thing for Marta to humiliate me with her friends. It was another thing entirely for it to affect my kids.
That's when I decided to stop playing defense and start playing offense.
I called in sick to work and spent the morning doing research. Victoria Hartman, Marta's puppet master friend. I wanted to know everything about her. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. Victoria's husband, David, was a successful real estate developer, but their marriage had been rocky for years. In fact, 3 years ago, there had been a very public scandal when David was caught having an affair with his secretary.
The affair had made the local society pages because David's secretary had been married to one of his business partners.
The whole thing had been a mess of lawsuits and divorce proceedings that had cost David millions. And guess who had been the one to expose the affair? Who had provided the photos and evidence that brought down David's secretary's marriage? Me. I'd been working on a financing deal for one of David's properties when I'd stumbled across some suspicious transactions. When I'd dug deeper, I'd found evidence of David paying for hotel rooms, jewelry, expensive dinners, all charged to the business account, but clearly personal in nature. I'd wrestled with what to do about it for weeks. Finally, I decided I couldn't be complicit in helping a man steal from his own company to fund an affair. I'd anonymously sent copies of the financial records to David's business partner. The fallout had been spectacular. The business partnership had dissolved, the secretary had been fired and divorced, and David had nearly lost everything. His marriage to Victoria had survived, but barely. I'd never told anyone it was me who'd blown the whistle, not even Marta. But Victoria was smart. She'd probably figured it out eventually. And now, 3 years later, she was getting her revenge by destroying my marriage the same way I'd helped destroy her husband's affair. My phone buzzed. Another message from my anonymous friend. Finally putting the pieces together, Victoria's been planning this for years, waiting for the right moment. She introduced Jake to Marta, encouraged the friendship, planted the seeds. Your wife thinks she's having a spontaneous affair, but she's really just dancing to Victoria's tune. The question is, what are you going to do about it? What was I going to do about it? That was the million-dollar question. I spent the rest of the day thinking, planning, trying to figure out how to fight back against an enemy who'd been playing chess while I'd been playing checkers. By evening, I had the beginnings of a plan. I drove to the boxing gym where I'd been working out for the past 5 years. It was a no-frills place in an industrial part of town. The kind of place where serious fighters trained and middle-aged guys like me worked out their frustrations on heavy bags. My friend Louise was there, as usual. Louise Chen was 32, tough as nails, and had been trying to convince me to take up actual boxing instead of just hitting the bags for cardio. "You look like hell, Evan," she said as I walked in. "Feel like it too." I told her everything. About Marta, about Jake, about Victoria and the 3-year revenge plot. Louise listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or shaking her head. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "So what's your move?" she finally asked. "I don't know. Part of me wants to just file for divorce and be done with it. But another part of me wants to make them pay." "Yeah." Louise smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. "You know what your problem is, Evan? You've been playing by the rules while they've been cheating. Time to level the playing field." "What do you mean?" "I mean it's time to stop being the nice guy. They want to play dirty? Let's show them what dirty really looks like." That night, I went home to find Marta waiting for me in the living room. She was still dressed for work, but she looked tired and stressed. "We need to talk," she said. "Okay, Ross called me today. He's worried about us, about our marriage." I sat down across from her, studying her face. "What did you tell him?" "I told him we were fine. But Evan, are we fine?" For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. She looked genuinely confused, like she couldn't understand how her perfect little double life had started to unravel. "That depends," I said. "Are you having an affair with Jake Morrison?" The color drained from her face. "What? Evan, no, Where would you get an idea like that? From the photos of you two at dinner Saturday night? From the hotel charges on our credit card? From the BMW key in your purse?" She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to figure out how much I knew, how much I could prove. "It's not what you think," she finally said. "Really? Because I think you've been sleeping with a guy 15 years younger than you, while your friends laugh about what a pathetic husband you have. I think Victoria's been encouraging this whole thing as some kind of revenge plot against me. And I think you're so caught up in feeling young and desired again that you can't see you're being manipulated." Tears started rolling down her cheeks. "Evan, please. It just happened. I never meant for it to go this far." "How far has it gone, Marta? How long has this been going on?" "A few months, maybe 6. I don't know. 6 months. Half a year of lies. Of her coming home to me after being with him. Of her friends mocking me while I stayed late at work, trying to provide for our family. I want you to end it," I said. "I will, I promise. It's over." But even as she said the words, I could see in her eyes that she didn't mean them. She was sorry she'd been caught, not sorry she'd done it. That night, as Marta slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and made my decision. If Victoria wanted to play games, I'd play games. If they wanted to see what real humiliation looked like, I'd show them. The nice guy was officially dead. The next few weeks were a masterclass in psychological warfare, and I was finally learning how to fight back. It started small. I canceled Marta's credit cards, claiming I'd noticed some suspicious charges and wanted to be safe. Suddenly, her expensive lunches with Jake became a lot less expensive. I also started showing up at places I knew they'd be. Not stalking, just being visible. If they were at that upscale restaurant downtown, I'd happen to be having a business dinner at the table across the room. If they were at the coffee shop near Marta's office, I'd be there getting my morning caffeine fix. The psychological pressure was working. Marta became jumpy, paranoid, constantly looking over her shoulder. She started working late less often, coming home earlier, trying to act like the devoted wife she'd never actually been. But the real breakthrough came when Louise introduced me to her friend Marcus, a private investigator who specialized in infidelity cases. "You want evidence that will hold up in court?" Marcus asked during our meeting at a downtown diner. "I can get you evidence, but it's going to cost you." "How much?" $5,000, cash, and you never met me." I paid him. 3 days later, Marcus delivered a manila envelope that contained everything I needed. Photos of Marta and Jake entering and leaving hotels. Credit card records showing charges for jewelry, flowers, expensive dinners, phone records showing hundreds of calls and texts between them. But the crown jewel was a recording. Marcus had somehow managed to bug Jake's car, and he'd captured a conversation between Jake and Marta that was absolutely devastating. "When are you going to leave him?" Jake's voice, clear as day. "Soon. I just need to figure out the finances. Evan controls all our accounts. Victoria says you need to be smart about this. Take half of everything before he knows what's happening." "I know. She's been helping me figure out what I'm entitled to. Did you know he has a retirement account worth almost $200,000? Half of that is mine." "What about the kids? They're adults. They'll understand eventually. And if they don't, well, I can't live my life for them anymore." Listening to that recording was like being stabbed in the chest repeatedly. 22 years of marriage reduced to a financial calculation. My wife and her lover, with Victoria's help, planning to take me for everything I was worth. That night, I made a decision that would have been unthinkable to the old Evan. I was going to destroy them all. I started with Jake's professional life. A little research revealed that Jake had been padding his expense reports, charging personal items to the company account. I anonymously sent copies of his fraudulent expense reports to his boss and to the company's HR department. Jake was fired within a week. Next, I went after Victoria. Remember those financial records I'd used to expose her husband's affair 3 years ago? Well, I'd kept copies, and a closer look revealed that Victoria had been skimming money from her husband's business accounts to fund her own shopping habits. I sent those records to David Hartman's accountant, along with a note suggesting he might want to take a closer look at his wife's spending patterns. But Marta was going to be special. I waited until she was at work. Then I moved half of our savings into a new account in my name only. Perfectly legal. It was community property, and I was entitled to protect my interests. Then I changed the locks on our house. When Marta came home that evening, her key didn't work. She stood on our front porch, pounding on the door, yelling my name. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. "What is this, Evan? Why don't my keys work?" "Because this is my house now. You want to live somewhere else with your boyfriend? Go ahead. But you're not doing it on my dime anymore. You can't just lock me out of my own house." "Actually, I can. Check with your lawyer if you want. But you might want to find a new lawyer, because the one Victoria recommended, he's been feeding information back to David Hartman about your divorce plans. Turns out Victoria's marriage isn't as solid as she pretended, and David's been looking for reasons to divorce her for years." The look of shock on Marta's face was almost worth everything I'd been through. What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that you've been played, Marta. Victoria didn't encourage your affair because she cared about your happiness. She did it to get revenge on me for exposing her husband's affair 3 years ago. She's been using you as a weapon against me, and you were too blinded by Jake's attention to see it." I could see the wheels turning in her head, the pieces finally clicking into place. She wouldn't. Ask her yourself. But you might want to hurry. Word is David's filing for divorce tomorrow morning, and he's going to take her for everything she's worth. Turns out she's been embezzling from his business for years. I closed the door, leaving Marta standing on the porch in the dark. Through the window, I watched her make a phone call, probably to Victoria. The conversation was short and heated, ending with Marta throwing her phone across the yard. She tried calling Jake next, but that conversation didn't go much better. Hard to maintain a relationship when one person is unemployed and the other is homeless. Over the next few days, I watched my enemies' lives implode with the same cold satisfaction they'd probably felt while destroying mine. Jake, unable to find new employment after being fired for fraud, moved back in with his parents in some suburb I'd never heard of. Victoria's marriage exploded in a spectacular fashion when David discovered her embezzlement. The divorce was front-page news in the society section, complete with photos of Victoria being escorted out of their lakeside mansion by security guards. And Marta tried to come crawling back. She showed up at my office on a Thursday afternoon, looking like she hadn't slept in days. "Evan, please, we need to talk." "No, we don't. I made a mistake. I see that now. Victoria used me, Jake used me, and I was too stupid to see it. But we can fix this. We can work through this." I looked at her across my desk, this woman I'd loved for over 2 decades, and felt absolutely nothing. "You want to know what the worst part was, Marta? It wasn't the affair. It wasn't even the lies. It was listening to you and your friends laugh about how pathetic I was. It was finding out that you'd been mocking our entire marriage to anyone who would listen. I never meant—" "Yes, you did. You meant every word of it. You just never thought I'd find out." She started crying then. Big, ugly sobs that might have moved me once upon a time. "What do you want from me, Evan? What do I have to do to fix this?" "Nothing. There's nothing you can do. It's over." The divorce was finalized 6 months later. I kept the house, half the savings, and my dignity. Marta got the other half of the savings and an expensive lesson about the consequences of betrayal. Ross and Amelia were hurt and confused at first, but when I showed them the evidence of their mother's affair, they understood. They still maintained a relationship with Marta, but they lived with me when they were home from college. As for my anonymous friend who'd been feeding me information throughout this whole ordeal, I never did find out who that was. The messages stopped coming after Victoria's divorce made the papers, but I had my suspicions. David Hartman had been looking for a way to get rid of his wife for years, and what better way than to use her own revenge plot against her? It didn't matter. The job was done. I was sitting in my backyard one evening, 6 months after the divorce was final, when Louise stopped by with a bottle of bourbon. "How are you holding up?" she asked. "Better than I expected." "Any regrets?" I thought about that for a long moment. Did I regret destroying the lives of people who had tried to destroy mine? Did I regret fighting back against people who had seen my kindness as weakness? "No," I said finally. "No regrets at all." Louise smiled and poured us both a drink. "So what's next for the new and improved Evan Mitchell?" I looked around my backyard, at the house that was finally mine alone, at the life I was finally free to live on my own terms. "Whatever I want," I said. "Whatever I damn well want." And for the first time in years, that felt like enough.